Don't ever answer a call from your own number. I received the first call at 7 in the morning. There I was, eyes closed and soundly snoring under the comfort of a heavy blanket, when the ascending clankerous jangle of my phone's ringtone broke the spell of beautiful sleep. Naturally, I thought to myself curmudgeonly as consciousness was forced upon me. I let it ring until it stopped. Though I was more than a bit annoyed at being roused from such a satisfying slumber, I soon slipped back into the grasps of sweet dreams. I woke an hour later. I had coffee, brushed my teeth, hopped in the shower, and inspected my reflection in the mirror to make sure I was passable as mildly attractive. "Not going downhill yet, Timothy," I said to myself, as I did every morning in some sort of ego-enforcing ritualistic exercise. At 8:25, with my monkey suit neatly in place, I headed out the door and down 4 floors via elevator, ready to start my day at Crawford, & Reynolds. You guessed it, law firm gopher. My phone began to vibrate in my blazer pocket, as it periodically does when a call is missed and the notification has gone unseen. Maybe I want another Caribbean cruise, I thought sarcastically to myself. When I flipped it open, I saw this. Missed call, November 7th, 7 a.m. And it was my number. This was odd, because it was my number. I puzzled over it briefly when the elevator gave a ding. As the doors slid open, I gave a shrug, grunted a quick humph, and was done with the matter. The rest of the day was mundanely routine. I won't bore you with the details. Suffice it to say that despite my suit, my job entailed making a lot of coffee, Xeroxing a lot of papers, and speaking my office-time chat phrase to waiting clientele. Mr. Crawford will see you now. After work, I met my best friend Ben at the Toxic Manhattan, a sort of trendy hipster meets corporate bar that I frequented often to unwind or pick up girls. There was more photocopying than usual today, and I was a bit more fatigued, so trying to get laid was not really in my game plan. "So this dipshit who took the bar exam 5 fucking times was made a goddamn associate," Ben said as we glugged down our mugs of imported Viennese beer. Everyone was a dipshit to Ben, except me, of course. But that exception likely only extended to me so long as I was in his company. "And you want to know why? Because his goddamn last name is Seymour, and the old man thought that it was quaint." Ben was a junior associate for Seymour and Seymour Law, and always had an axe to grind about something related to his work. I was beginning to get bored of his complaints when God granted me a small favor, or at least I thought so. My phone began to ring. "Hey Ben, I gotta head out, pal. This is very important." I looked down at my call screen and saw it again. The incoming call was my number. "What the?" I said, not really to anyone at all. "What's up?" Ben asked. This is the second time today I've gotten a call from my own number. Ben's face went from mild indifference to childlike interest, and before I could do anything, he pulled the phone from my hand and flipped it open. "Yo, this is Benjamin," he spoke into the receiver. "Speak, dickhead," he said after a few seconds of silence. He turned to me when no reply came. "Your shit is proverbially whack." I snatched the open phone back and pressed it to my ear. "Hello? Hello?" My own voice repeated back after a few seconds' delay. The beginning bit sounded weird, almost like a backward echo that had been corrected right before the first syllable. "This is Tim. Who is calling?" "Who is calling? This is Tim." I was a bit unnerved. Of course I had experienced the universal phone echo before, as I'm sure most people who have had a telephone have. But this just sounded strange, like my repeating voice was affected by some kind of reverse reverb. Add to that, this was my own number calling, and I'm sure that vague drop I felt in the pit of my stomach was understandable. I was about to hang up, but the voice, my voice, spoke again. "You're not going downhill, Timothy. Yet." I closed the phone, downed my beer, put a crisp 20 on the bar table, and made to leave. "All right, Dick," I heard Ben in the background. "You don't have to say goodbye or anything." Under normal circumstances, I would have shot back the old, "Fuck you too, Ben." But these weren't normal circumstances, and right then I could give 0 fucks about Ben. If I was stirred getting a call from my own phone or hearing my own voice repeat back to me in some kind of unnatural reverse echo, then I was completely shaken by that last line. "You're not going downhill, Timothy. Yet." The line kept playing in my head as I walked hurriedly down the street. "You're not going downhill, Timothy." I could still hear it as I got in my car. Yet. I started the engine, reversed like a son of a bitch without any semblance of caution, and sped my way home. When I stepped through my front door, I made a beeline for the restroom. I inspected the mirrors, cabinets, and every crook and cranny for something to make sense of this. I must have looked like some crank addict searching for that last bit of inconspicuous hidden meth. I had it worked in my head that maybe someone had been recording me, though why, I couldn't imagine. Maybe someone connected to one of my boss's high-status clients, I thought as I tore up the couch. Or possibly one of the many girls I've scorned looking to settle some score, I postulated as I emptied my dresser drawers. Then a thought hit me, or maybe Ben is just fucking with me. I didn't really buy it, but the idea eased my nerves and I forced acceptance. 5 minutes later I was laughing, cursing Ben under forced chuckles while I made a rush job of cleaning my mess. That night, I lay myself to sleep, feigning relief, but feeling an uneasy knot in my stomach. I awoke at 8 in the morning, drank my coffee, brushed my teeth, and gave my reflection a serious studying. But everything seemed to be normal, so I laughed and got dressed. On my way down to street level, I caught sight of myself once more, on the elevator door's brassy surface. I practiced a winning smile and admired what I saw. I got so carried away that I pretty much leapt into the air when my phone rang. No. Incoming call? It was my number. I let it ring to voicemail as the doors opened and hurriedly made my way to my car. But it kept ringing. It kept fucking ringing. It rang as I started the engine. It rang as I drove down the 405. It rang and rang until I snapped and answered it. "Cut the shit, Benjamin." "Cut the shit, Benjamin," my voice replied back. The echo sounded faster now. The obscene silence that preceded my mirrored words had become an awkward pause. I don't know why, but that terrified me. I hung up the phone, pulled out the battery, and put the pieces in my jacket's breast pocket. The action did little to comfort me, but I was able to get through most of the workday. That was until the final hour. I was sitting in front of Mr. Crawford's desk, the father, not the son, taking dictation as he spoke aloud about strategies for pursuing a case he was retained for when my breast pocket started vibrating. My forehead was instantly dripping in a cold sweat. But my fingers kept typing. Crawford kept speaking, and my phone, it kept silently buzzing. "I took out your battery," my mind screamed. "Timothy, are you going to silence that damn vibrating phone of yours?" Crawford shouted, breaking his stream of thought mid-sentence. I stood up, reached into my pocket, and pulled out my intact phone. "I'm sorry, Mr. Crawford, There, outside the office window, I saw him stroll by. I saw me stroll by. I gotta go." I ran out of the room, leaving my very flustered boss screaming after me. The words, "You're finished," were used, but I really wasn't thinking about job security. Back door, my mind automatically instructed as I sprinted down the office hall, bumped into one of the reception girls, and sent hundreds of papers flying. "Get up, don't apologize, back door." I did just that, but I couldn't stop myself from stealing a look back towards the front of the office. I saw the doors open. I saw him, me, step in. The son of a bitch smiled at me, a big toothy shit-eating grin. I ran out, jumped in my car, and for the second time in 2 days tore asphalt like a maniac down the Los Angeles roadscape. I wasn't thinking, really. Otherwise, I would have gone anywhere but where I went to. But home is where we all go when our minds check out in paralyzed horror, and we need a figurative, safe blanket to hide under. When I stepped through my doors, all I wanted to do was curl up on my bed and black out. But I knew the second I was inside that confrontation was coming. As if to cement that realization, my phone rang. With trembling hands and a cracking voice, I answered. "Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this?" His voice was virtually inseparable from mine now, save a millisecond or two, and together we sounded like a double-tracked recording. I looked out my window, phone in hand, and saw him parking my car. "My God," I said to myself. "My God." My doppelganger mirrored into the phone he carried. I watched him make his way to the building's entrance. He stopped and looked up at me, making a sad face and shrugging his shoulders, as if to say, "I'm sorry." But the next second he was all smiles again and resumed his walk through the building's doors. I dropped the phone and ran to the couch, pushing it against the apartment door. Then I threw my hutch on top of it. In panic, I started buttressing the door with anything heavy I could drag: dresser, television, the goddamn toaster oven. I was in a complete state of terror, heart racing, mind useless, hands trembling. But when I heard the ding on the elevator doors opening, all I felt mere seconds before was dwarfed by the purest paralytic horror. I could only take in sights and sounds. I could not synthesize them into thoughts. Footsteps down the hall, closer, growing louder, stopping in front of my door. I felt a wet warmth running down my leg. The sound of keys jingling, the lock turning. My eyes couldn't be wider if you pried them open with clamps. The knob turned, but the door wouldn't give. "You're going down, Timmy," his voice said calmly from outside the door. He pushed himself against the door, but my barricade held. "You are going down. Push. Timmy." I don't know if I breathed in over a minute. No, Timmy." The pushes gave way to slams, and the door opened a sliver as my barricade was forcefully pushed back. "You're really not listening." Slam. I could see bits of him now through the narrow opening. "You are going down." Slam. His foot was through the opening now, but he still could not make it all the way through. I fell to the floor in a fetal position and looked away. The phone was right beside me. Maybe it was inspiration from seeing it, or that my fight mechanism finally kicked on in response to my impending, whatever he was going to do to me. But I got an idea. It was a stupid idea, perhaps the Hail Mary of ideas, but an idea nonetheless. My doppelganger pulled his foot back from the opening, and I knew from the running steps I heard moving away from the door that his next slam would be the kill shot. I just had one chance. I flipped the phone open and dialed as I heard him begin his charge. It rang. More importantly, I could hear my doppelganger outside my door. "Hello?" I heard myself answer, but I wasn't paying attention. Pulling myself up, I cautiously made my way around the toppled mess and to the door of my apartment. There was no one there. "Hello? How are you calling me from this number? Who is this?" Tears streamed down my cheeks. Not tears of joy or triumph, but of survival. Traumatic survival. My lips started to move. "Hey, do me, yourself, a favor, and change your goddamn number," I said into the receiver before hanging up and throwing my cell onto the floor. It broke open, circuitry flew out, and I was finally smiling. That was 2 weeks ago. I am still recovering, and probably will be for life. But I write this all now because I need to exercise the shell shock I feel, and to warn you. Please, don't ever answer a call from your own number. Technical difficulties. It was the middle of September, and I was stuck babysitting my younger siblings while my parents took one of my sisters to a college fair a few hours away from our home. It was around 5:30 p.m. on a Friday night, and my youngest siblings, 8 and 5, were watching cartoons on TV. This had become somewhat of a routine, as just recently a channel had been added which plays cartoons all day long. Anyway, on to the story. We were sitting in the living room. I was lounging across one of the couches, making sure my siblings didn't start fighting and tearing each other's heads off or something. I had brought a book with me, Wuthering Heights. Not that that's important, really. and I was struggling to focus on the story because of the loud television sounds. I gave up on reading finally, coming to terms with the fact that I would probably stay on the same page for the rest of the night. So I put my book down and instead started watching the cartoons. At this point, my brother and sister had gotten bored of the TV, as kids usually do, and they had begun to draw, sprawled out on the floor, coloring with markers and crayons. While they were busy coloring and making their own masterpieces, the television screen turned white. It just sort of happened. Right in the middle of the cartoon, the voices cut off, and the television screen just turned white. It stayed like that for a few seconds, and I looked down to the floor to see if my siblings had noticed, but alas, drawing unicorns and donut spaceships was far more important now. I glanced up at the television again, and I saw that the screen had changed, and it was now orange, with some sort of pattern on it that reminded me of background options that laptops and desktops come with. But that wasn't all. In the middle of the screen, in block letters, it read, "We are sorry. We are experiencing some technical difficulties." No big deal, right? I mean, the kids weren't even paying attention anymore. I wasn't going to complain about missing the plot of a cartoon, although, in all fairness, if it had been something like Tom and Jerry, I would have thrown a fit. So the screen remained like that for about 2 minutes or so, and I checked my phone while I waited for the television to go back to normal. I was scrolling through Instagram when my phone screen flashed. It was quick, just a quick flash of a white screen, and then Instagram closed. I didn't think much of it as I have a pretty outdated phone, and so I opened Twitter instead, but the same thing happened. So I figured it was the Wi-Fi, and oh how I wish it had been. But when I glanced back up at the TV, it did the same thing. It flashed white. But this time, there was a picture, something on the screen when it flashed to white. I couldn't really tell what it was, as it only lasted a fraction of a second, and then it was finally back to the normally scheduled programming. I forgot about it for the rest of the night and went to bed after my parents came home about 2 hours later. Now, my bedtime routine is usually me lying in bed binge-watching Netflix for about 2 hours before finally going to sleep. So that's what I did. I was laying there watching some comedy show that I can't recall at the moment when my laptop did it. It flashed white. Except this time I could see what was on the screen. In skinny red letters, it read, "Look." Just that. Look. I decided to ignore it and went back to my show. About 5 minutes in, the screen flashed again. This time, a picture. It was a picture that almost made me scream. I won't go into too much detail. I'll just say that it was a head, a decapitated head, and it belonged to a child, no older than 10. I stared at my computer screen in horror, and then glanced up and noticed that the light on the top of my screen was on, meaning that so was the webcam. Now, I'm not going to bullshit here and say something cliché like, I figured I must have turned it on at some point and so I just blew it off and turned it back off. Because that is absolutely not what I did. I did go to the settings and I did turn it off, but I was also 150% sure that I had not turned it on. After this, I realized that I should probably turn off my laptop and attempt to fall asleep, as one normally is able to do after seeing something like a head of a child. However, before I could shut down my laptop, another message flashed onto my screen. This one lasted for about 3 minutes, and it was a bit longer. "We know that you saw it. We cannot be fooled. You are now a member." I shut my laptop so fast I almost broke my wrist, and stuck it into my clothes hamper and attempted to go to sleep for the next 4 hours. The next morning, I woke up and grabbed my phone, checking my text messages and emails. I had one email from an unknown email address, unknown as in I did not recognize it, whose subject read, "Congratulations, you're in." I clicked on it and it just said one thing, "Welcome to the TDC. We are happy to have a new member." I stared at it, confused, and then deleted it. As soon as that happened, another email popped up which read the exact same thing. I tried deleting it again and it just kept happening. So finally, I left it alone. The rest of the day was pretty normal, except I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me, even though all the windows in the house were covered by curtains. I shook it off as paranoia, and I was cleaning the house when the house phone rang. Yes, my family still has one of those. I picked it up and asked, "Hello?" There was silence for a few minutes, and then a very familiar voice responded, "Hello?" in the same tone. It was my voice, my exact voice, like an echo being played through the other end of the line. "Who is this?" I asked. There was silence, and I was about to hang up when the most horrible screaming erupted from the other side of the line. I quickly hung up the phone and unplugged it from the wall as I sat down at my desk to do homework. At this time, my parents were home, and everyone was sort of doing their own thing. Also at this time, the doorbell rang. My mom, who is as paranoid as I am, forbids us to open the door unless it's someone who we recognize. So when my brother said that there were 2 men outside in suits who he didn't know, no one answered the door. I sat in my room on my phone when it did it again. Flashed white with another message. "We know you're here. Open the door." I froze and looked over at my window. The curtains were drawn and the outside was not visible. I didn't move. I didn't say anything. I looked back down at my phone where there was another message. "The only way out is death." At this point, I was a tad more annoyed than I was scared, because, come on man, I'm a broke college student living with my parents. You think death is going to scare me? I put my phone down and continued on about my day. Later that evening, I was sitting in the living room where my siblings were watching a movie on TV. I was sitting on the couch next to my brother when the TV screen started glitching. The screen went black and then that same orange color with the same words appearing on it. "We are sorry. We are experiencing some technical difficulties." I got a bit more annoyed at this point. What kind of organization communicates through screens? And so I threw my head back against the sofa and closed my eyes. After a few minutes, I heard my brother calling my name and shaking my arm, so I opened my eyes. I was laying on the couch, and he was standing in front of me. On the TV, a cartoon was playing, and my sister was on the floor coloring. My brother held up a piece of paper and shoved it right into my face. "Look what I drew!" he exclaimed. I grabbed it and pulled it away so I could see it. It was a picture of a head. A child's head, just in the middle of the white sheet of paper. I froze, stunned and confused. I heard the front door opening and looked over to see my parents and my sister walk in. "Sorry, we're late," my mother called. "There was so much traffic." I hate driving on Friday nights.